Emotional neglect is one of the hardest childhood experiences to recognize because, unlike obvious forms of trauma, it often leaves no visible event to point to. There may be no dramatic memory, no single moment that explains everything, no clear story of what went wrong. And that is exactly why its effects are so often misunderstood. Emotional neglect is not always about what happened to a child. More often, it is about what did not happen, the comfort that never came, the reassurance that was never offered, the emotional attention that should have been present but quietly wasn't. Children do not need constant praise or perfect parenting to develop well. What they need is consistent emotional recognition. They need to feel that their internal world matters, that their fear, sadness, excitement, confusion, and joy are noticed and responded to in ways that teach safety. When that process is missing, children often adapt in silence. They become functional, responsible, quietly self-sufficient. On the outside, they may seem unusually mature. But beneath that maturity, small behaviors often emerge later in life that reveal what was absent long ago. These behaviors are usually subtle. They do not look dramatic. In fact, they often appear so ordinary that most people never question them. But psychologically, they can reveal a history of emotional deprivation in ways far more honest than memory ever could. The first small behavior is apologizing for things that require no apology. Someone bumps into them, and they say sorry. They ask for help and apologize for bothering you. They express an opinion and immediately soften it with unnecessary self-correction. This often reflects a childhood where emotional needs were treated as inconvenience rather than something worthy of care. Over time, the child learns that taking up emotional space creates tension, so they begin minimizing themselves automatically. Apologizing becomes less about guilt and more about permission to exist without causing discomfort. This behavior often follows people into adulthood because it feels protective. It reduces the imagined risk of rejection. If they apologize first, they believe they can soften potential criticism before it arrives. To others, it may seem polite or overly cautious. But psychologically, it often reveals a nervous system trained to anticipate emotional invalidation. The second behavior is instinctively saying, "It's fine," when it clearly isn't. This response often appears almost automatic. Someone crosses a boundary, disappoints them, or says something hurtful, and they immediately dismiss their own reaction. They smile lightly, wave it off, and reassure the other person before even checking what they themselves feel. This often develops when emotional expression was ignored or discouraged in childhood. If a child learns that expressing discomfort creates dismissal, irritation, or emotional withdrawal from caregivers, they adapt by disconnecting from visible reaction. Their internal distress remains, but expression becomes unsafe. As adults, this creates a strange split. They feel hurt, but instinctively perform emotional ease. The third behavior is over-explaining simple choices. A person declines an invitation and immediately offers an elaborate explanation. They set a boundary but justify it excessively. They explain ordinary preferences as though they require defense. At its core, this reflects conditional acceptance. Children raised with emotional neglect often learn that their preferences are not automatically valid. If they wanted something different, they had to justify it. If they said no, they risked criticism or dismissal. This teaches the nervous system that autonomy must always be explained. Later in life, even simple self-directed decisions can trigger unconscious anxiety. Over-explaining becomes an attempt to secure emotional permission from others. The fourth behavior is visible discomfort when receiving kindness. Someone gives them a compliment, and they deflect it. Someone offers support, and they become awkward. Genuine warmth often creates subtle tension rather than ease. This surprises many people because we assume kindness always feels good. But for emotionally neglected children, care was often inconsistent or emotionally unfamiliar. When kindness is rare, the nervous system does not easily recognize it as safe. It feels uncertain, even suspicious. As adults, receiving care can feel disorienting because it conflicts with internal expectations. Part of them wants connection. Another part distrusts it. This creates discomfort around precisely the thing they need most. The fifth behavior is hyperindependence in small, unnecessary ways. They struggle quietly rather than ask for help. They insist on solving everything alone, even when assistance is easily available. They minimize difficulty and present themselves as fine, regardless of internal strain. This often begins as adaptation. Emotionally neglected children learn early that support is unreliable or emotionally expensive. Asking for help feels risky because it may lead to disappointment, dismissal, or shame. So they stop asking. Over time, self-reliance becomes identity. It feels safer to need nothing than to risk unmet need. To others, this looks strong. But psychologically, it often reflects early emotional deprivation rather than genuine preference. The sixth behavior is scanning conversations for subtle rejection. These individuals often notice tiny shifts others miss. A delayed reply, a different tone, a shorter message, reduced enthusiasm. Their mind immediately begins searching for explanation. This reflects heightened relational vigilance. When emotional availability was unpredictable in childhood, the brain learned to monitor connection carefully. Small changes became important signals. As adults, this pattern often continues automatically. Their nervous system scans for signs of withdrawal because it learned that disconnection could happen quietly and without explanation. This does not mean they are irrationally insecure. It means their brain adapted to emotional inconsistency by becoming highly observant. The seventh and perhaps most revealing behavior is struggling to identify what they actually feel. When asked how they are, they pause. Not because they are hiding something, but because they genuinely do not know. Emotionally attuned parenting teaches emotional language. Caregivers help children name internal states. You're frustrated. You're disappointed. You're nervous because this matters to you. Over time, this builds emotional literacy. Neglected children often do not receive this reflection. Their feelings remain unprocessed and unnamed. As adults, they may sense internal discomfort but lack clarity around what it is. This creates emotional confusion that often goes unnoticed because they appear functional. But inside, they may feel disconnected from their own emotional world. What makes emotional neglect so powerful is its invisibility. There is often no dramatic memory to explain these behaviors. Many people say, "Nothing bad happened in childhood, so why do I feel this way?" But neglect rarely announces itself through obvious harm. It often reveals itself through absence. The absence of comfort. The absence of emotional curiosity. The absence of being deeply known by the people who were supposed to know you best. The person who says it's fine can learn honest discomfort. The hyper-independent mind can slowly relearn trust. The emotionally confused self can develop language for what was once invisible. Healing often begins this quietly. Not with dramatic breakthroughs, but with small moments of recognition. Moments where someone finally notices a behavior and realizes, this was never weakness. This was survival. And survival patterns, once understood clearly enough, can finally begin to soften. Personally, I think this is what makes emotional neglect so important to understand. Its effects are often hidden inside behaviors people mistake for personality. But once you see the pattern clearly, compassion becomes possible. And maybe that's where healing really starts, not in blaming the past, but in finally understanding the child who adapted the only way they knew how.